1 year ago, the Diamondbacks were en route to the World Series.
It's the first time in 16 years they have hosted a championship series.
Today, not so much. In fact, they missed the playoffs altogether, overpaid on one of the most expensive free agents, and they have an owner that has flat out insulted his own player publicly. Yet, 1 year ago,
The Arizona Diamondbacks are headed to the World Series.
they were arguably the most fun team in baseball and had players everyone loved.
Vaught gets a standing ovation as he walks back to the third base dugout.
They were an impossible journey that made it happen.
If they win, I will retire.
The Diamondbacks were heavy underdogs all season and postseason. They barely snuck into the playoffs at 84-78, were outscored seasonally by 13 runs, then had to face a division winner in the wild card, then a 100-win team in the divisional, and then a 2022 World Series roster in the NLCS. But one round before the World Series, they had to face their hardest challenge yet.
We have arrived here at this best-of-7 championship series. Two teams that match up for the first time ever in the postseason.
The D-backs conquered Philly and were on to the next round for the first time in over 20 years.
But we're gonna get on an airplane. We're gonna head west for Dallas in the World Series.
Arizona had a tough task, which was to beat the Texas Rangers, a team that had the best postseason record in MLB history when playing on the road, and defeated some of the AL's best teams like the Orioles and the Rays. 2 off-seasons ago, the same Rangers team spent $561 million in a single off-season on free agents alone. In this same 2023 season, at the trade deadline, they acquired 2 superstar starting pitchers and a well-known bullpen arm. These are both 2 teams that faced heavy adversity to get to the World Series. Let's not forget that just 2 years before that series, the D-backs were a 110-loss team. Manager Torey Lovullo spoke about their quick transition, saying, "I've thought about it 100 times for sure. I've thought about it 110 times. How about that? I can't wrap my mind around it. It just goes to show you perspective, persistence, hard work, that anything's possible. We're a small market organization and we've done it from within. But the real challenge was winning the thing and defeating Texas. When comparing the 2 teams, Texas was number 3 in runs scored and the D-backs were 14th. The Rangers were 18th in ERA, but the Diamondbacks were 20th. In nearly everything the Diamondbacks were good at, the Rangers were better at. One of the most unmanageable problems for the Diamondbacks was that they could not afford to lose any start from their number 1, number 2, or number 3 pitchers in the postseason. Because if we look past those starters, they had no pitching depth at all to start games. So that problem caused them to overwork their pitchers throughout the postseason and even pitch a bullpen game with no true starter during Game 4. The last big disadvantage for the Diamondbacks was their managerial situation with manager Torey Lovullo. He had never managed a World Series game in his career, whereas Rangers manager Bruce Bochy won 3 World Series with San Francisco during the 2010s. And all of these really just caused the Diamondbacks to drop this series and lose all of their momentum.
This is painful. This is just plain painful, and I can't quite move past that right now. But
They lost, and the city of Arizona completely felt distraught and the emotions hit hard. But at the very least, it was a very promising season. In the pitching staff, Brandon Pfaadt emerged in the playoffs with a 3.27 ERA, giving them a great trio of superstar Zach Gallen, veteran Merrill Kelly, and rookie Brandon Pfaadt. As for the lineup, they had 3 starters who had an 800 OPS or better overall for the season. But now that the offseason was beginning and free agency was opening, they had a chance to fill some of their glaring roster holes. Before getting into those crazy events, we need to talk about the sponsor of today's video, Vessi Shoes, who have created groundbreaking technology in their newest big release. An everyday shoe that's waterproof called the Tidal Sneaker. Think about times in your life where you could have used waterproof shoes. You may have gone hiking or even went to a baseball game, but the rain ruined all of those experiences. Instead of walking around all day in wet shoes, why not switch to the superior alternative? If you live up north with the snow or live down south with the rain, these will 110% come in handy like they have for me. The Tidal sneakers are my everyday footwear all year around in every single season. Them being waterproof isn't the only crazy thing, but it's also a stylish shoe designed to get you from point A to point B in a very comfortable fashion. I'm wearing this shoe, so why aren't you? Just embrace this fall season with Vessi's title sneaker and unlock unbeatable comfort with waterproof shoes. Discover more fall-ready styles at vessi.com/purelybaseball to get 15% off and order your first pair now. As for the Arizona Diamondbacks, General Manager Mike Hazen became their executive president after 2016 and quickly made the playoffs in his first year in charge. However, since then, they were going through a multi-year playoff drought, meaning for 2024, they had to go all out. They had to try to win, and they plan on not only doing that, but also winning the World Series in 2024. But before signing any star player, GM Mike Hazen wanted to lock down manager Torey Lovullo to a long-term deal, keeping him through 2026. The next order of operations was going to be player personnel.
We had a trade today. Eugenio Suarez, he is headed to the Arizona Diamondbacks from the Seattle Mariners.
Suarez was going to be an instant upgrade over their 2023 third baseman Emmanuel Rivera, with him hitting for a higher OPS and more home runs than Rivera did. In the starting rotation, the Diamondbacks were anticipating signing a superstar, specifically Eduardo Rodriguez. He was coming off of his best season yet, pitching a .330 ERA with the Detroit Tigers, making it his lowest ERA ever. On December 8th, the Diamondbacks pulled the trigger on a 4-year deal worth $80 million guaranteed, giving them 4 starting pitchers in their rotation with 1 spot open. They didn't address that open rotation spot until way later in the offseason, but they did address one major question mark on December 17th that happened to be their outfield problem. Because after the season ended, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., one of their best players, became a free agent, and he had a projected deal of 4 years, making $54 million. Rumors were swirling that they wouldn't end up bringing back Gurriel and would instead trade for Rays star Randy Arozarena. Ultimately, they didn't trade for Arozarena, and they ended up signing Gurriel on a 3-year deal worth $42 million, keeping one of their best bats in their lineup. The Diamondbacks seemed to be having a great offseason that just kept getting better.
So the Diamondbacks signed Joc Pederson to a 1-year, $9.5 million contract.
In 2023, Joc Pederson played up to a .764 OPS and was considered one of the better DHs in baseball. But last but not least, the Diamondbacks made one more major move just 2 days before their opening game.
Major news coming down as Jordan Montgomery is now a member of the Arizona Diamondbacks.
What made this move so significant is the work that Montgomery did in the postseason. Through 37 total innings, Jordan pitched a .263 ERA and struck out 24 players. This move completed their offseason, an offseason that was clearly successful, where they added 2 starting pitchers, a third baseman, and a designated hitter, while also only losing 1 player to free agency. So, as of March 27th, their offseason was officially complete.
Marte is home, Corbin's home. It's a 2-run double for the birthday boy, Christian Walker.
The Diamondbacks won in an explosive fashion on opening day, winning in a stunning 16-1 game, with nearly everyone getting involved offensively, including third base acquisition Eugenio Suarez. In the third inning specifically, the D-backs lineup scored 14 runs, which is the most runs that any team has scored in one inning on opening day since the year 1900. The third inning ended up lasting over 30 minutes.
First time in Diamondbacks franchise history they've had an 8-run inning on opening day.
Will there ever be a more memorable opening day for you than what happened last night with you guys?
Probably not. You know, I don't think I've ever been a part of an inning like that, whether it be opening day, whether it be Pony League, high school, college. That was unbelievable.
Opening day gave the city of Phoenix hope, but as the season went on, things came to get a whole lot harder. They lost the first series to the Yankees, went on a 5-game losing streak, and struggled in the beginning of the month. By April 19th, they had already lost 3 total series and had a record of 9 wins and 11 losses. But that same day was super important for the 2024 Diamondbacks.
Jordan Montgomery is on the mound making his Diamondbacks debut.
What did he do? He went 6 innings and gave up only 1 run, capitalizing on a great day in Arizona with a final score of 17-1 for Montgomery's first seasonal start as a Diamondback. Montgomery having a good outing was essential for the team, especially considering that Eduardo Rodriguez was out with a lat strain from the beginning of spring training. But the celebration from this day turned out to be very short-lived, losing 4 of their final 6 games and ending April in the most bizarre delay that we've seen all season long.
Quite a scene here at Chase Field. You're looking live at a bee colony that has established a foothold high atop the backstop behind home plate, and thus we remain in a bee delay.
A bee swarm delayed their game by 2 hours, in which of course they later lost that game, finishing their monthly record at 14-17. By the time May came around, starter Merrill Kelly was transferred from the 15-day IL to the 60-day IL with a shoulder injury, leaving their rotation down to Zach Gallen, Brandon Pfaadt, Jordan Montgomery, and a young 26-year-old Ryan Nelson. Nelson at the time had a 5.23 ERA and clearly just did not belong in the rotation. So clearly, the injuries were certainly piling up and hurting this team. May ultimately just wasn't the Diamondbacks' month, while the Diamondbacks were losing important series that were considered must-win, including the final 4 games of May where they went 0-4. So why were the Diamondbacks so bad? Outside of injuries from key stars like Rodriguez, Kelly, and closer Paul Sewald, there was one glaring problem with the Diamondbacks. You see, when we look back at 2023, Corbin Carroll was their best player in virtually every single offensive statistic. He had a 5.4 WAR, 25 homers, 285 slugging, and an 868 OPS on the season. Carroll was also a great player on the base paths, stealing 54 bases, only behind Acuna and Ruiz on the season, good for the 3rd most stolen bases in MLB. And he also became the first player in MLB history to 25 homers and 50 stolen bases. If we look at the end of May in 2024, Corbin Carroll was not the same player at all. His bat was at a career low, hitting for only a 197 batting average and a 573 OPS. But the worst part of his entire season was that he no longer did this.
He'll play it off the wall. Corbin Carroll flying around second. He'll head for third.
Carroll stole only 1 base all month in May, making it his lowest number of stolen bases in a single month since his career began. They had a 25-32 record by the end of May, at a season low 7 full games below 500, sitting at 4th place in their division. The D-backs' momentum didn't exist heading into June, meaning winning needed to happen as soon as possible. And through the first 4 games of June, that is exactly what happened.
Let's go D-backs! Let's go D-backs!
Momentum was finally beginning to build, whether it was Ketel Marte's 2-run homer in the 9th inning on June 2nd, or the offense putting up 10 runs on June 1st, optimism was finally here. They went 7-3 in their first 10 games that month over rivals like the Padres and Giants, and others like the Mets and Angels, putting them above 500. They ended June with a 16-11 record, good for what was their best month of the season. Undisputedly, they were beginning to form an identity of what they were great at, good at, and bad at. By the end of the month, their record sat at 41-43, sitting about 2.5 games away from a playoff spot. So how are they magically performing at such a high level? Well, for starters, the bullpen was performing great. Closer Paul Sewald was fully healthy and came back, pitching in 11 games for a perfect 0 ERA. Reliever Kevin Ginkel had a .75 ERA by the end of the month in 12 games. Secondly, their offensive production had really increased. Whether that had been Ketel Marte having arguably his best season to date, chasing his first ever MVP, or even utility man Kevin Newman out of all people hitting for a .316 batting average in 16 games.
Kevin Newman is on quite a roll offensively.
So, the Diamondbacks were finally showing signs of life, but they had a tough road trip ahead with 2 of their rivals, 2 of the best teams in baseball.
He's back big! Padres walk it off! Nando gets it done! Fly ball, left field, at the wall, gone!
Sure, the D-backs were on fire, but to think that they'd win both of those series would be insane. But the result was also insane, winning 4 of 6 on that road trip, all of which were must-wins. They were in position for victory in all 6 of those games, but Paul Sewald blew multiple of them in heartbreaking fashion. Regardless, the Diamondbacks stayed hot from July 10th to July 20th, winning 6 of 7 games. In the middle of that time span was the All-Star game where Ketel Marte represented the D-backs. But because it was mid-July, it meant that the trade deadline was coming up and the second half was coming up. So they had to play their best baseball.
Corbin Carroll with an inside the park answer back.
The Diamondbacks won the Chicago series, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and then came Washington. By trade deadline day, their record was 56-51, good for 5 games above 500. General manager Mike Hazen saw one major weakness with the team, and that weakness was the bullpen. Not only had they given up 50 home runs as a bullpen, higher than any other NL team, but they had the 4th highest bullpen ERA in the NL. So, they saw an opportunity to add arms into the bullpen, trading for 2 key bullpen arms, lefty AJ Puk and righty Dylan Floro. Puk wasn't having nearly as good as a year as Dylan Floro was, but Puk provided leadership and was a veteran MLB player. The last move was actually an unplanned and unexpected one that did happen due to their first baseman Christian Walker getting hurt. They were unsure how long he would be out and decided to add externally in the form of a switch-hitting first baseman.
The Arizona Diamondbacks have traded for first baseman, one-time All-Star, one-time Silver Slugger, Josh Bell.
This marked the end of their trade deadline, sitting with a record of 57-51 and adding multiple different players. Corbin Carroll was coming off of his best season yet, and stars like Eduardo Rodriguez were nearing their return from the injured list. Not to mention, they scored 17 runs in the last game of the month. Everything was playing out perfectly. All they needed to do was hold a wildcard spot over the next 2 months as they entered August. And specifically, things started out very well in August for their new first base acquisition.
Josh Bell joins the party. Way back and gone. Welcome to the Diamondbacks, Josh Bell, and what is... Josh Bell lifts it pretty deep. There it goes. Josh Bell has tied the ball game. His first Diamondback ball game, and he's homered twice.
This was a beginning to a phenomenal month, arguably their best month in the entire year. And to make it even better, Eduardo Rodriguez finally made his Diamondbacks debut on August 7th, pitching 5 innings and letting up 3 runs. They ended up sweeping Cleveland and then winning a 4-game set against the Phillies. But on August 10th, something horrific happened.
Now, Ketel Marte is down.
Stubbs came in hard trying to stretch that single into a double, and Max Esposito out there to have a look.
Ketel is up now and limping around.
Ketel Marte landed himself on the 10-day IL in the midst of chasing a league MVP. Regardless, Merrill Kelly came back the next day and performed well, providing some optimism during a tough time. They played inconsistently, sweeping the Rockies in a 3-game series, but then getting swept against Tampa Bay. By August 18th, their record sat at 69-56, 13 games above 500. Over the next 6 games, they went 6-0, giving them an 88% chance to make the playoffs according to Fangraphs. Eduardo Rodriguez had pitched 3 starts up to this point with a 3.94 ERA. As for Jordan Montgomery, on the other hand, he was so bad that they decided to move him into the bullpen in the midst of their 6-game win streak. Whether it was his injuries or not, he simply wasn't good. After this move happened, the rest of their season seemed to fall apart with it, dropping 2 of 3 games against the Mets and then blowing their divisional chances by losing a series to the Dodgers. Regardless, they still seem to be playoff locks with their most important month coming up.
Got him! Diamondbacks sweep in Boston. They go 600. They'll go for the sweep tomorrow with Zach Gallen.
They finish off the sweep. That is 6 in a row. Diamondbacks are rolling. They have won 10 of their last 13. And they win it 9-8. His first ever walk-off home.
In September, it was by far their most chaotic month, the craziest, with the most intense games and a tough playoff race. They entered the month with a 76-60 record, tied with the Padres for the #1 wildcard spot, and had a 91% chance of making the playoffs according to Baseball Reference. In early September, they won a series against a division rival in San Francisco, lost a series to the Astros, and then won 2 games against the Rangers, setting them up with 4 series remaining and the team scrambling to make the playoffs. Starting with the Rockies. They were playing in Colorado, so it should have been an easy series against a team that was 58-93, in which this happened.
Fastball with some good movement on it. Yeah, watching that, that's the strikeout victim. And there's the first one of those.
And in the bottom of the 9th one game, somehow this happened.
Pitcher steps in. And this is a broken back roller. There's one on the first. Here comes the winning run.
They of course lost a series that they easily should have won. Simply, they fell victim to their #1 ranked offense. They collapsed in one of the easiest cities to hit baseballs in, leaving them down to their final 3 series, playing 1 in Milwaukee and the rest at home. In an explosive fashion, the team won their first 3 games against the Brewers, but the series finale is what mattered the most. Heading into that game, they had a 97.5% chance to make the playoffs according to Baseball Reference. And those odds were about to jump up dramatically as the Diamondbacks were leading 8-0 coming out of the 3rd inning with a 97.5% chance to win the game. But then, suddenly 2024 Jordan Montgomery happened along with the Diamondbacks defense.
At that point, and now the Brewers have him on the corners.
That's a base hit. In to score. Brewers have 2 men aboard, nobody out. There's a rocket into right center, and it's off the glove of Peyton Smith. Wind him up, coming in to score. Adames Sanchez to 3rd, Frelick to 2nd.
Okay, sure, it was a mix of Montgomery imploding along with the D-backs defense, in which the bullpen would let up 7 more runs over the next 6 innings, losing them the game with a score of 9-10. Their record dropped to 87-69 with only 6 games remaining on the schedule. The Arizona Diamondbacks finished their season going 2-4 in that stretch, and at one point going scoreless in 43 of 53 innings, leading to the finish of their record being 89-73, the second most wins that they had ever had in franchise history. So they were in a 3-way tie with the Braves and the Padres. This potentially would be their second time ever making the postseason in back-to-back years. But the question was, did they make the playoffs or did they not? To make the postseason, they needed to have beat the Braves in their season series or have beat the Padres in their season series. But before I tell you whether they did that and made the playoffs or not, and how they did, you need to understand that a bundle of factors led to their September collapse. Whether that was players like Ketel Marte and Christian Walker being overworked, or stars like Lourdes Gurriel Jr. being injured. And simply, the regular season record would have been better if Corbin Carroll was better. If we look back at 2023, he had a 91% success rate when stealing a base, whereas in 2024, it fell down to a staggering 81% success rate. But inevitably, the number one reason that they finished 89-73 was both Jordan Montgomery and Eduardo Rodriguez simply were not good enough. With Montgomery pitching a 6.23 ERA and Eduardo pitching a 5.04 ERA, if those two were healthy and pitched well all season long, they certainly wouldn't have had the 27th worst ERA in baseball. And especially, they wouldn't have had that 5.34 ERA in September, which was dead last in the league, by the way. And in fact, the Diamondbacks owner decided to trash talk Montgomery and blame him for the poor pitching, saying that signing him was the biggest mistake of their season and that it was his idea to sign Montgomery in the first place. He said, quote, "Looking back in hindsight, a horrible decision to have invested that money in a guy who performed as poorly as he did. It's our biggest mistake this season from a talent standpoint." A big mistake indeed. In the end, the Arizona Diamondbacks missed the playoffs in 2024, yet still one thing was on everyone's mind.
We should have made the playoffs, and we didn't, and it's pretty disappointing, quite frankly.
They failed, and all of Arizona is disappointed in the Diamondbacks. But there is one team that had a rebuild going from the worst team in baseball to one of the top in the league, none other than the Baltimore Orioles. So if you want to learn more about their insane strategy, click the video on your screen right now.